Good morning. We will start broadcasting in a minute or two. So good morning, everybody. We still wait for a few people around the world to show up. So we give it 30 seconds and then we start up. And please, everybody, say good morning in the web chat. Give it 20 more seconds. All right. Good morning here from New York.
Good morning.
We have a good number of attendees from all over the world, from all the way from Australia, where it's late night, to very, very early morning in Los Angeles, to Sweden, to Brazil, to Portugal, to Mexico. It's fantastic to see. I think we have India, Pakistan. I think we have, yeah, it's pretty cool. So welcome everybody. We will now start to broadcast the webinar. So we will start with greeting everybody from all the cities around the world and head into to our slide deck. Give me a second. So we have someone from logging in from South Africa too. Very welcome. Great to have you. So we will start with the first pretty critical slide here. It's the world is under critical disruption. I guess that's no news for anyone anymore. The good news is that we might be able to fix it with if we join forces. So we have global warming, we have mass pollution, population explosion, macro conflicts, hyper competition. At the same time, saying that innovation is actually one of the keys for really try to solve the big tricky issues that we face. What's interesting is that a vast majority of all organizations around the world, 84% in fact, they want to innovate and solve the issues they face, but only 10% of them have the tools and guidance to do so. And that is exactly what today's webinar will be about. We are lucky, there are a few courageous individuals, people like Greta Thunberg and many others that really put things on the map and stress how important it is to find solutions to the challenges we face. On the minus side, we have quite much focus on incremental innovation, short-term profit, and lack of commitment. And that doesn't really lead to the change that we need. And the problem is not the lack of ideas. The problem is actually how do we get there? And what do we do to go there? And why do we go there? And the typically ideation process, I think that you're quite familiar with that everyone is super excited in the beginning and we want to innovate. Then suddenly we realize that we are in big trouble and we don't know how to get out of it, and it's getting more expensive, and then eventually too big to fail, and we continue. So for today, the objectives is to create a language for innovation. It is to generate new insights. It is to go ahead and codify the future of innovation. And it's also peer discussion and insights. And you're more than welcome to post things in the chat, and we will bring it up. And you can also post it as a Q&A if you want to, but the chat is fine. Most of you have also done an Inno survey in advance, which means that you have a 40-page full report on your organization and your organization's ability and aspiration to execute on innovation management. And we will pick up statistics from your reports. And I would also ask you to take up a piece of paper and a pencil or a computer to write down a few things very soon. And we will use that during this our webinar. We will start with the inspirational theory, and then we will actually work with your profiles. Most of this will be done from your own home, and the one that is going to our live seminars in 50 cities around the world, they will work with it physically in the room. So in the online session, it will be more based on your homework. And then we'll draw some conclusions. And after that, in the physical meetings, we will have mingle, and in online meetings, you're more than welcome to reach out afterwards. So a little bit short about Innovation 360. We are focused on innovation management, and basically we help you to move the needle from where you are today to where you need to be tomorrow, to really execute on your strategic initiatives and make innovation happen. That's basically what we do. And for that, we use evidence-based methodology and data. And today you will be, you will have a glimpse of that. And also for the one that did the report, you will also have a full report about the organization. We will use it to elaborate on today. So if we start here with a few slides around innovation management, it is more than 50% of the GDP is driven by innovation, and 84% want to buy from innovative companies, and employees are more loyal to innovators, up to 77%. So that's one of the reasons why innovation matters, except from that's the only way to deal with the big issues we're facing as a society. And innovation could be either incremental, or it could be radical, which means new innovation. And incremental means you improve what you already have. It could also be innovation centered around your business model or your products or solution, services or organization structure. So it could be many things actually. What's interesting is that there is a pretty large study back in 2010, and there has been a good number of following up studies after that, showcase that if you are an innovator, which means that you have an innovation strategy in place compared with being a spender, you grow significantly more, you earn much more, and you also have a much higher market cap. And it's quite big numbers, as you can see on the slide. What's also interesting is that if you have a coherent innovation strategy, which means that you have the capabilities in place to execute on the innovation strategy you have, you will actually have up to 24% higher earnings. So if you are coherent, you have up to 22% higher earnings. And if you have an innovation strategy compared with not having that, you have actually another 13. So it's a very, very big difference. And basically, innovation is about extending the S-curve you have of today. And it's about doing things better and better and continue to stick around, basically. It's a blood circular. And then you try to find new things. That is the upcoming S-curve, the exploratory work. And innovation management is a balance between the incremental and the exploratory work. So we typically slice up innovation in 3 horizons. The first, which is the incremental here and now, where the return is cash. And the third one, that is focusing on insights, that's the future, where you really is in for learning and you can measure that. And in the second horizon, you typically do prototyping, experiment, piloting, you have strong hypotheses, and then you get a lot of data, you can make decisions, and you can move it into the first horizon. That's basically to balance risk. Another interesting study is one that we did back in December 2018 that we presented to IEEE. And we could prove with data that radical innovators are more structured than incremental innovators when it comes to decision making and ideation, but also partly at least development and commercialization, but definitely around decision making. And it's quite interesting because it would be intuitive to believe it was the other way around, but data show clearly that radical innovators are more mature in the whole innovation process, especially in decision making. What's also interesting is that radical innovators are also incremental, but not vice versa. So I would like each and one to take up a piece of paper. We take like 10 seconds and then we go ahead again. I would like you to write down on a piece of paper, if you believe that you have an incremental business, then put an I, a radical business, put an R, technology driven, put a T, market driven, put an M, need seeking, put an N. So you put 1 or 7 of those letters on a piece of paper. And then you write on the same piece of paper P1 to P5, depending on how strong you think that your innovation process is. Is it very, very strong, P5, weak, P1? And do the same for capabilities, from C1 to C5. If you believe that you have the right capabilities and it's very strong, put it as C5. Otherwise, something that is below that. So we take 10 seconds each one do that, and that will make the whole session quite much more fun actually. All right. We give it 2 more seconds. So let's go ahead and I'm going to put up an example to showcase the difference between someone that is systematically working with innovation management and someone that is not, and it might surprise a little bit. So is there anyone that could take a guess in the chat what we see on the left-hand side? Is there anyone that would like to type something in, what you see on the left-hand side on the slide? There is no guesses. We give it a few more seconds. Anyone that could type in what you see there? A projector, yeah. A Betamax, yeah. Well, it's good guesses. So it is actually the first digital camera from Kodak. What's really interesting is that they went under Chapter 11, which means basically bankruptcy, and then they tried to restart the company again. Even if they had a first digital camera back in 1975, and the first commercial cameras really hit the market like around 2003. And on the other hand, on the other side of the screen, you see the patent from Gillette that was filed more than 100 years ago. And it was sold to Procter & Gamble 2011 for something that was much more worse than the whole Ericsson. This is very interesting, and Gillette is still doing very good, and Kodak, even if they try to reboot, they're struggling. What is the reason for that? This is one example out of many examples, but it's an interesting example because there's a lot of research around it. And the reason is actually anthropology, to really understand what do your customer want to have. So in the case with the digital camera, they were focusing quite much on chemicals for developing, and they had the best year ever before they went bankrupt. So they had the issue of not understanding what the customer really were buying from them, which is apparently memories. If they would understand that, they would bought or acquired Adobe at the time, which they could done for a tenth of the company value. And then they would most likely be one of the most powerful companies in the world today. While Gillette was focusing quite much on shaving, and they employed a good number of anthropologists. So if you shave with a shaver every morning, if you ask a group of people how many strokes do you take every morning, they say in average 45. And you might think that is much, many people do. The actual number is actually more than 135. So it's very tricky to really know what you do in the morning. That's the lessons learned, and that comes with anthropology. You don't really know what you want, and customer doesn't know that. So you need actually to study behavior, and that's one of the most important things that we know from studying more than 5,000 organizations in 105 countries. That is driving innovation and decision making, that you do understand your client on a deeper level. However, if you are in a competitive market and you make the jump to a new market, you do the jump to a new S-curve, still things happen, and it's a good number of companies that might do one jump, but they don't survive anyway actually. So you have a good number on the screen here, and it's many more companies recently Toys R Us, Sears, and many, many more that go bankrupt. This happens all the time. It happened 100 years ago, it will happen 100 years from now. And the reason is that it's overconfidence, arrogance, you don't listen to the customers. Instead, you just do things like focus groups or surveys, and it doesn't really tell what they want. You should study them and observe and learn, and be humble also to reevaluate. Otherwise, you might have a sudden collapse, and if you have normally do too little, too late. So there is some pretty common factors hindering organizations from truly innovate. And one of them is that large organizations typically tend to prioritize large market, and competence becoming incompetence, and there are internal conflicts, and you get stuck in market preferences, and product architecture can create deadlock in the organization. And successfully developed technology might actually might not really create the runways you're looking for. And new technology can change structure of the industry, and the investment calculation might discriminate innovation, like ROI is pretty hard to do in anything else than the first horizon. That's also why we suggest to do ROI in first horizon and not in the second and third. So, however, when you make the jump, this is always happening that the market is following, which means that you need to organize for continuous innovation, both in the first and second and in the third horizon, to create a balance over time. If you have the first of my books about assessing and measuring this innovation, you will find this table here where you can see very clear correlation between capability, leadership, and strategy, and also metrics and competences to the different horizons. What's interesting is that only 1 out of 10 companies in the world has aligned the strategy with the capabilities. And having more than 5,000 companies makes our database the largest in the world in 105 countries. And therefore, we can also draw that conclusion that only 1 out of 10 has aligned the strategy with the capabilities, which create less efficiency. So what we will do today is that we will do a deep dive into your data, and you will have the reports that you can go back to afterwards, where we can actually examine the iceberg of innovation, what's under the surface. So before we do that, a few lessons learned. Generally, radical innovators are more structured than incremental innovators, which is very counterintuitive, but when you think about it, well, if you're radical and you stay around, you must be structured. It takes 3 times to learn a process. So when large corporation or mid-sized corporation ask us for, could you just give us the process? We say no, because we know you will fail. It takes at least 3 times to run a process to learn it. The other thing is fail fast and fail cheap. So the problem is that could also be misinterpreted. So therefore we say fail fast, not just fail cheap or just start to fail. I mean, you have to learn, and you have to do it pretty quickly. And then diverse teams is also very, very efficient, but it also calls for a higher purpose. Otherwise, you might end up in conflicts. But if you have a higher purpose, then diversity outperforms conformity. And then we also learned that slicing up the big elephant in horizons help you to focus in your resources. What we also found is a good number of what we call innovation blockers. So generally speaking, silos is blocking innovation, that you work in silos. You don't have the faith in the objectives. You don't have any higher purpose, and you are actually fear of failure. And you have a big issue dealing with uncertainty because you want certainty. It's very common. So what you need to do is that you need to organize for innovation, and you have to make a few design choices. You need to think about the governance, the process, the roles, and the tools for your innovation management system. You also need to make sure that you have the right capability, leadership, and culture. That's also why we do the innovation assessment. So typically, we implement an innovation playbook with everything described: the governance, the processes, the roles, the tools, and governance is also KPIs, it's policies, steering committees, and so forth. And then we have a look at capability, leadership, and culture to make sure we support it in the right way. And then we go for the operational model. There is actually an upcoming webinar not long from now about that. It's where you deal with budgeting, resource allocation, and so forth. And then you link all of those things to your strategic initiatives, and you start to manage your portfolio. So that's basically how it ties together. So if we dig into the innovation management system, that will be the focusing today, and especially the capability and competences needed for that. You typically start with ideation and selection, and you move into decision making, go into portfolio management, maybe spike back if you run into trouble, and iterate over your stage gated or the stage gate where you make the decision to go ahead. And you typically have innovation support in terms of culture, methodology, tools, capability, and competences. And you have a governance model with a strategy, leadership, the horizons, and so forth. And when you go into in detail into the innovation process, you have things to think about, like how to break up the strategic initiatives. And typically you link strategic initiatives to campaigns, and you link them maybe to observation, maybe to intersection, and the campaigns typically end up in ideations, and you start to collect ideas and clustering them and iterate over them, putting up hypotheses, doing experiments, and then you move into decision making, and that's typically done by an innovation board. So that's the overall process. You find those in our books published as well and online, and then you link it to an operational model. And basically, what you do is that you link the external outlook. We typically do pest analysis, and we have tools for doing mapping of global key drivers. You link that to vision and mission and purpose and to goal for innovation. And then you also take in your weaknesses and strengths, which is the 360 assessment, together with your corporate strategy. And you iron out strategic initiatives that goes into the innovation portfolio and innovation management system. And this is basically how everything goes together. So we will now jump in to the assessment where you participated, and we will jointly elaborate on that and see how can you organize to make sure to deliver on your innovation management system and your strategic will. So when we assess, we have a framework where we have why, what, and how. This is built on the last 100 years of current thinking. And we have also patented it, and it's a unique way of exploring any kind of organization. And the why part is why you innovate, and the what part, what you innovate, and how it really happened out in organization. Typically, the first clash that you face is that you have an incremental performance engine, and then on the other hand you have a radical innovation engine, and that they don't go especially well together. So I would like you to have a look on the piece of paper you wrote. Did you write that you are incremental, an I or an R? And think about it. If you have both or one of those, what does it mean for you? And as a group today on this call, you are incremental innovators. So it might be a few of you that have both radical and incremental aspiration, but as a majority, you're incremental, which also means that you will get stuck in the first S curve as a group. So if this were one company and you did this 360 and this is the answer, you need to be quite worried, because then you will be out of business because you don't have the aspiration of finding for the future. So if you were only radical, I would say that would also be a little bit worrying, because then you might not focusing on today. You actually need to focus both statistically, but it also depends on where you are on the S-curve, of course. So if we go ahead to the next one, the strategy, and you have a look at the piece of paper, and did you write an N or an M or an T or all of those? And what does it mean for you? Do you focusing on need, looking for potential of applying superior understanding of the end user and rapid go-to-markets? Or are you focusing on following the market? Or do you try to use technology to change things? So you can do one of those or all of those or zero of those. What we know statistically is that the most fastest growing companies that do all of those, but it's quite hard. You need to be a little bit larger to have resources for that. So that also means that entrepreneurs typically focus on one, but they change over time. And as a group, you're technology driven. And that is an efficient way of creating innovation, and that is your strategic aspiration. What we know statistically is that if you go with one, need is the one driving most profit and growth, and technology on the second place, and market read on the third place. But we also know if you combine them, you can take it one step further. So think about that. And later on, you can also have a look in your report and see how did you answer. Did you answer that you have one of those, or all of them, or none of them? So if we look at you as a group, this is quite interesting. We have data from today's call, that's the yellow bar, and we have one late tonight, that's the light blue bar. And then we compare with China and large corporation in the upper quartile. And we compare with the World Innovation Circle that we run here with you, and also in 50 cities around the world. So what conclusions can we draw? Well, the group today, now, you have less aspiration in all three strategies. And you need to think about that. Well, actually, no. You have more in technology driver, I can see that here. But it's less, for instance, compared with China. So you're more technology driven than tonight, and then compare with the World Innovation Circle in 50 countries, but you are behind China. And you score lower in need and market. So this is just relative numbers. If you do a full 360, you can actually benchmark against anyone or anything. And that is quite interesting to see where are your aspirations. So how about the leadership? There are 5 styles of leadership that we know is highly correlated to innovation and innovation management. And it's the cauldron, the spiral staircase, the fertile field, the Pac-Man, and the explorer. So the cauldron is an entrepreneurial style where you challenge the business model frequently. You throw things basically into the cauldron and see what's happening. While the spiral staircase is a style where you climb upwards without losing the overall goal. And the fertile field is the gardener, where you grow things and see what's happening. The Pac-Man, where you acquire. And the explorer is a style where you try to find out new things. So you can combine all of them or a few of them. And the question is, where are you as a group? Well, you're cauldrons. That's quite interesting, actually. So you do a lot of experiments as a group. So if we have a look again and compare you with tonight and the whole World Innovation Circle we run right now, and with China, it's interesting that you are scoring actually lower on almost everything except from Pac-Man, that tonight is scoring low. but it's around 3. So basically, I would say that you are cauldrons, maybe with a little bit of fertile field. Why is this important? Well, apparently, you have the aspiration of working with incremental technology, but you really don't have the leadership for either experimenting or the spiral staircase, which is the most suited for incremental innovation. Aha! My advice, if you were one company, is that you need to strengthen the spiral staircase, because otherwise you will not be able to be incremental. And if you would like to experiment with technology, well, the cauldron is a good start, but it might be strengthened a bit more. So this is why it's important to actually understand the organization. And if you explore an organization with 360, you will have most likely different answer in different part of the organization, which means they can actually utilize the organization in a pretty smart way. So how about the innovation process? So pick up the letter you wrote. Is it a strong process or a weak one? And think about it. What's interesting here is that in this group, the product selection is quite weak. It means that you don't have the capability of making decisions. So imagine that you will strengthen the number of ideas and the product selection. Well, that would help you quite much. So again, in one company it might differ, and you can find what we call pockets. But also have a look at upper quartile in China. This is pretty big database, and there is reasons to be worried if you are based anywhere outside China. We will now move into the wheel of innovation. And the wheel of innovation is constructed in such way so we see capabilities driving growth at the top, driving profit at the bottom, internal focus to the left, and external focus to the right. And then you can map that into even to quartiles and go even deeper. And we use these kind of insights to map to a transformation trajectory, where you start with assessing, storming, norming, conforming, performing, and continuous improvements. So by defining the state of today and the desired state and reassess, you can actually move the needle and make sure to close the gaps. And then you can drive more profit, more growth, and more market cap, which is quite interesting. So how about the capabilities then in the group here? Well, this is a really interesting one. The yellow one is the group today, and the light blue is the group tonight. So tonight it's a lot of focusing on services, customer experience, customer insights, but hardly nothing on value proposition, on channels, supply, while the group today is quite focusing on value proposition. My take on this is that you guys, you have high aspirations, but you don't really have organized yourself for delivering on that. So it means that you will most likely cost a lot of money and most likely you will fail. So if you want to fix that, you need to understand which capability to go for and how that is used to build up the innovation process, and maybe add a little bit of radical aspiration to that, and you will be fine and all set for competing on the global arena. So also please have a look at your innovation capability on the piece of paper and see how it looks like. What was your estimation? It could also be quite interesting actually to draw your own footprint. You can do that after the webinar, and then you can compare and contrast with your report. And if you didn't do the report, you can just draw it. And then I would suggest that you also draw a footprint. How would you say that your employee would score this? How would you say external would score this? And maybe there are different stakeholder groups externally, like partners, suppliers, customers, and internally. It might be several levels or regions or countries or functions or business areas. And suddenly you start to realize that you need to understand the autonomy of innovation management to be able to really execute and be faster, take lower risk, and make more money, basically. So the homework for all of you guys is to have a look at the first page of your report and discuss with someone the result on the first page, which is the wheel of innovation, and also the innovation process. You have both of them on the first page. And then you can compare and contrast with your first thoughts that you wrote down on the piece of paper. And then you can go into the different sections and you can read carefully about how incremental radical is your organization. What is your focus on technology, market, and need? And actually in the report, based on artificial intelligence and deep learning, you will have 10 suggestions on what to look closer at. And that is also in the report. So you will have a complete profile with your aspiration, with strategy, type of innovation, which is also part of the aspiration, and then the ability part with leadership, culture, and you will have the capabilities and innovation process. And you will also have some very tangible recommendation what to look further on. And it's of course based on a single point of view because it was one person answering. And typically in assignments, we have everything between 15 to, well, the biggest one we have done is it's over 100,000. So there is everything in between there to really understand the full potential and what's blocking you internally and how to close the gaps and align. So please have a look at the report. And if you haven't done the report, you can email us and we can help you to generate the report and bring that to some peers, friends, colleagues, and discuss the report. So if you are unclear where to start with innovation, or if you're frustrated with your lack of growth, or you're unhappy with the result you're getting, or if you're uncertain that you're on track, or worried about building momentum, if you have any of those, this approach will definitely help you, and we are more than happy to help you with that. So please reach out. If you know where to start, you're not frustrated, and you have a super growth, and you get just good results, and you are absolutely on track to be world leading, growing every day, and you have full momentum, then that's good. Continue with that. If you feel anything in between, the approach will help you. So we have a few minutes. So if anyone has a question, you can put that in the Q&A, or you can just type it into the web chat. So in the meantime, I want to do some advertising for upcoming webinars. We will feature a webinar for the business model, the operational model, and we will feature another webinar, how to cut the innovation process or the development process in certain companies with up to 30%. So during the spring, we will announce 2 extra webinars, one about how to cut 30% of the innovation effort and time needed to take an invention to an implemented innovation on the market. And that goes very well together with stage-gated processes if you work with product development. So basically, how do you save 30% in your product development process? And if it's anything else, it's the innovation process. Another one will be around the operational model, and we will launch the dates in our newsletter. So let's see if we have any questions here from anyone. Yeah, so there is someone here asking in the Q&A how many people you should assess. Well, I would say it's depend on. If you are a smaller corporation, you can assess the whole company. If you're a larger one, you typically sample from different business areas, and you go from there. So Great having you, and we are here if you would like to reach out to us. And I wish all of you a great day, a great evening, and a good night, depending on where you are in the world. So great having you all, and thank you for today, and see you next time.